Welcome to the Impact Room, brought to you by Douglas Jackson, who help you hire more impactful, diverse leaders who stay for longer and are more successful. The Impact Room is a business, CX and leadership podcast where exceptional, diverse and impactful leadership and wisdom is shared. We dive deep into pressing topics that impact your customer-led business, featuring interviews with CEOs, COOs, Chief Customer, Chief People Officers, directors, influential leaders and subject matter experts who share their lived experiences, top tips, thoughts, advice and industry trends to help elevate existing and future talent. So let's dive into our next episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe or share if you enjoy this content. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Impact Room, where today I'm joined by Morris Pentel. A lot of you will probably know Morris already. He's one of the originals from the customer experience space, shall we say. That was one of his own words from our previous calls, if I'm right in saying, not mine. Morris, great for you to join us on the Impact Room today. If you don't mind, obviously, instead of taking the words out of your mouth, do you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself and tell us who you are and what your background is?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. The Impact Room's a favourite channel for me to listen to some very interesting stuff. My name's Morris, and my background is I was probably one of the earliest people to stand in a room and to say to an organization, let me tell you what a call center is, in the 1980s. And I've worked at the leading edge of contact center technology, from the very first dialers through to the very first cloud-based contact centers. And I then moved into customer experience, and I was, I think, one of the first people in a financial institution to be a customer experience person. And over the last 15, 20 years, I've been lucky enough to train and work with some of the world's biggest organizations in customer experience.
No,
that's my background.
No, thank you very much for that. So I suppose let's take you back to that first session in 1980s where you were on the stage and asked what is a contact center. I suppose bringing that forward a little bit, and obviously, as say, contact centers are more than just contact center or call centers as you were originally known, as you say. I suppose what is CX to you? What does CX mean to you? Instead of what's a contact center mean? What is CX for you?
So that's an interesting question, and I think on the one hand, what I would say is CX is an out-of-date term that means customer experience. And what I mean by customer experience, I'll come back to in a moment. But from a practical point of view, I think that CX and EX and PX, i.e. agent experience, patient experience, as well as customer experience, are now a single type of discipline that's driven by science, that's driven by behavioural analytics, that's driven by the digital revolution, by habits, behaviours, and these kind of things. And that therefore CX no longer stands alone as the sole place of innovation and measurable experience that's important. CX has led the way in our understanding of how to join channels together, in our expenditure on customer experience technology. But now that technology is available to patient experience, to employee experience, to community experience. And so I think that CX is now really X, if you like, but that has some rather horrid connotations these days in terms of social media. I make no comment about social media, but you can't call anything X these days. But I think that experience science is the child of customer experience, and I think that's where organizations need to be going.
Interesting. And obviously looking at experience, to say whether, customer, patient, employee experience, I mean, looking back to, obviously the years and stuff, and obviously looking back, as I say, to your first ever session on that stage back in 1980, I mean, where do you think customer experience is, or, experience, as you just said, is right now? Do you think we've got it right? Do you think it's broken? I mean, what's your kind of view on where we are and where we should be?
Oh, another nice question. So I guess my first answer is to say that it's broken. But I think actually that's not quite as accurate as it might be. I don't think it's put together properly.
Okay.
And the reason that I think, I think there is a gap between customers' expectation and what we deliver. And I think that Gartner and all of the other organizations who produce these reports have identified this gap year on year on year. We just don't do a good enough job. And somewhere between what we want to deliver and what customers want to get from us, there's a problem. But I think that the reason that there's a problem is not because it's broken, because that implies that we've built it perfectly in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think what we've done is we've built an imperfect idea of customer experience. And of course, my own work, which is about analyzing experience and understanding how behavior works in more depth, is a branch of customer experience that provides a very different kind of insight to what you get by running surveys, by NPS, by customer effort, by doing those kind of things. And so I see more detail of where things don't work. And if I may, I'll just speak to one of those because it's my great passion at the moment. I'm writing a lot about it. It's the thing I want to train the world to do something about. Is at work recently, I'm a director of an AI company. I'm also a director of a thing called the Customer Institute, putting best practice out there. And we did a survey at the AI company, and we found that hesitations, confusion, stops in conversation stops, cost 50% more when they occur in a phone call. Now, there is a really juicy thing. If every phone call where a customer is confused or upset or doesn't understand something or needs you to repeat something, or you give a 20-minute explanation of something that they've fallen asleep by the end of, then what you do is you're wasting time. And so in my world, it's logical to go look for these things, to build looking for those things into daily routine in order to continuously improve that. And in my work as a consultant, I very rarely see people spending money on doing practical things like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I suppose there is so much technology available nowadays, especially from an analytical perspective. I mean, obviously, speech analytics is such a whole new area which is growing dramatically. I mean, obviously, speech analytics has been around for a year, but I do think there is. It's not just with the speech analytics as well. It's the quality analytics and the insight that's available to our operations now, whether that is patient, a contact center, whatever there is. I mean, where have you seen a good, or maybe a not so good case of where you have seen someone use analytics, insight, intelligence to help with this, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I think, okay, so there's two parts to my answer. The first one is this. What I'm talking about is actually humans listening to stuff.
Okay.
and that we don't do enough of it, and we don't look for things that happen often. If a customer hesitates, or if a customer re-asks a question, or a customer says, I don't want to understand, then that is a mission critical failure in the way that Jeff Bezos thinks about how Amazon should operate, because there should never be confusion in the world. Yeah. However, if you're talking about analytics, there I've got to put my hands up and say, I work for an advanced AI analytics company. And so my view is that speech analytics is great. It will tell you what people say. And, we've always understood a huge amount of what goes on in the contact center, except for what's actually going on in the conversations. And and our conversations are the biggest source of insight we could possibly have. But where I'm in innovation, because I've always sought out the leading edge, is that our platform, and I'm not aware of many others that do it, but this is not a pitch for our platform, understands emotion, understands behavior, understands context. So, I mean, I have actually analyzed conversations that are in Chinese where the platform's told me someone is sad in this bit, you have a listen. Now, that kind of next level of understanding will be impactful on compliance, will be impactful on quality assurance as we get to much more granular insight that is capable of monitoring 100% of compliance issues. Then you're talking about the potential for new legislation to protect consumers, requiring people to have much better compliance approaches. So, I mean, when we talk about things like speech analytics, and speech analytics is an early generation of this stuff, and I look forward to where we are, and there'll be people out there in the market doing similar things. What I'd say is that changing both the patient experience, changing the customer experience, changing the employee experience, because the ability to detect when a member of your team has had 3 bad phone calls in a row, and maybe it's time to take them off the phone for 10 minutes and give them a hug, to reduce staff churn. This new iteration of technology is significantly more powerful in terms of what it's capable of doing, because the understanding of, so we talk about understanding what's said when you talk about speech, but conversation is understanding what wasn't said.
It's very true.
And more to the point, what that means.
Interesting. Okay, fine. So, just looking into that a little bit more, I mean, as you say, there is so many things on the market now to help with analytics and speech and insight and stuff. And as you say, it's the advancements are growing through AI, etc., etc. But a lot of people are, especially in the contact center world, and obviously with the different channels, and obviously with the different generations that are our customer base. I mean, the Gen Z are obviously a lot more technical based and are a lot more money focused, etc., etc., as compared to, say, the millennials, who will just talk to anyone and have a conversation with anyone and probably be on the phone for 20 minutes just talking about what they watched on EastEnders, that's all, whatever it is. Where where is it? What would you say is the number one tip you would give to someone that's about to start on a journey with speech analytics? Whether that's looking to implement it, or have implemented it and are looking to take it to the next level. What is the one thing that you've seen? Obviously I know you've just mentioned there some of the things that could be done, but where is there anything that could be done, say, manually, or or even what is the number one kind of tip or advice, or top 3 tips it could be, that you'd give to someone that's going through a journey at present when it comes to understanding their contacts within the operation?
So I guess the first thing I'd say is continuously look at what's coming up in terms of technology. Yeah, what the places that I work, what was possible 5 years ago, we couldn't imagine. Goodness knows where we're going to be in 5 years' time. Yeah. However, the most common thing that I find is conversation stops. So, what I would say is that if you want to expand your skills, then you need to do a little bit of exercise and mental stretching. And this goes back to a conversation that we've just both had about fitness and exercise.
Yeah.
but from a practical point of view, you want to try and do something that, number one, will engage your colleagues, and number two, will produce practical results. So the most common fault that there are conversation stops, and that's hesitation, or I don't understand, or can you repeat that, or hang on, what do you need? What do you mean I should have had my customer number with me? Why didn't you tell me that for 20 minutes I was waiting in the queue? Yeah. So what you're doing is listen to some phone calls, identify the things that just slow it down, take it off track. I've sat in a contact center and heard someone repeat the exact same script 20 times, and in 20 times, the response has been the same from the customer. I don't understand. And then the agent has explained it in a non-scripted way, an unscripted way. Sorry, I'd lost the use of English there. In an unscripted way, and the people understand.
Yeah.
So why is it that you have that capability and ignore it? So look for things that go wrong in calls and then share those, give them names, and then share those with colleagues, and then ask them to find things for you to discuss. It may well be, a good example might be that you're telling someone about a guarantee that comes with a service they bought in the wrong way on the wrong channel.
Yeah.
And that's taking your phone call off. Okay, well, can we now send you that as a text?
It's true.
Look for the small stuff in conversations and think about them with colleagues. Think about ways to innovate. Well, I did a project once and they opened the phone calls with, what's your order number? What's your customer number? Okay, how can I help you? That's not the way to answer a phone call to someone. You've got to just think about things in a holistic way and see where you can take the pressures out. And I guarantee you'll find things. And if you do this on a regular basis with your colleagues who listen to calls, then what you'll do is you'll expand your vocabulary of understanding of how conversation works. And then one other final thing that I will say is conversation analysis is a science. There are books by people like Professor Elizabeth Stokoe. There are reports. There is the Conversation Analysis Institute. There are all kinds of organizations out there producing fantastic material on this subject. Learn. This is kung fu. Yeah. We have to continuously learn. Every day's a school day.
It's so true. I couldn't agree with you anymore. And I think this is it, isn't it? Really, I think the technology that's out there nowadays is such an enabler to help us do our jobs more effective and efficiently. But at the end of the day, the thing that no technology has is the wisdom of people. As you say, an understanding more than just behind the point. I mean, it is that emotional intelligence and that that whole kind of piece and understanding the wisdom of, oh yeah, that doesn't quite work in that way, or yes, we that can work, and they say it actually understanding, they say the ability to put your arm around someone, etc., etc. I think that's some of the things that you've mentioned over this last 10 minutes have been great so far, and I think there is there is a lot to be learned there, that actually, these practices, they're years old. It's I've been doing a lot, obviously, as you mentioned before. We were having a quick chat before we joined this impact room session around sports and stuff, and we were both having a conversation around, obviously, for knowledge, obviously, those that don't know, I do a lot of half marathons. Morris does open water swimming, and it is a mindset thing, and I think the practices around mindset have not changed for hundreds of years. It's all about being the better future self, etc., etc. And obviously, Stephen
Trying every
Bartlett does
day.
it. Yeah, exactly. Stephen Bartlett does all these things, and I think I did a LinkedIn post recently on exactly this. The quicker you fail, the quicker you'll succeed. And I think
I just
go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing about the technology side of things. So one of the big things that we really have a huge loophole in is dealing with vulnerable customers.
It's true. Yeah.
And vulnerable customers come in a series of groups. Now, it depends whose regulations. So the FSA have different regulations to other bodies, but there's life circumstances. So I may have a gambling issue. There's health. I may, I may have lost someone. There are all kinds of different things to do with vulnerability.
Mm.
And one of the things about the technology that I work with today is it understands advanced scenarios. So we were playing with this stuff, and we were doing for a test for an American airline, and it has all of these vulnerability things in. So it means you don't need to program it to say I've lost all my dosh means I am vulnerable.
Yeah.
I've spent all my money at the races. You don't need to program this stuff in. So anyway, we're doing this thing on an American airline, and it flagged up a vulnerable customer on the basis of the fact that the customer had said in the phone call, "My pills are in my suitcase, and you've lost my suitcase." Now, technology is now really advanced in terms of what it's capable of doing. But to make the best of it, you've really got to up your skills.
Yeah.
And so, it's when I talk about things like vulnerability and why this is going to be so fundamental, because at the moment, organizations tend to fish for cases they think are bad, as opposed to having every single case measured and marked and watermarked. And so this is big stuff, but it's only when people use the technology. Lewis Hamilton is a Lewis Hamilton as much because of the car and as well as the car.
Yeah.
He'd still be an amazing athlete, but it's the combination of him and the car that puts him on the leading edge. The same with all of the, all of them, all of the F1 drivers.
Yeah.
It's the same with all of the people who sail those amazing mad catamarans in winds, or the people who can not look stupid on kite surfers, which doesn't include me.
No, brilliant stuff. And obviously, I just want to come back to a point that you mentioned earlier around customer confusion. It was something that you mentioned quite a few times when we were talking around the customer being confused with scripts, etc., etc., etc. I mean, with contact centers and the way we operate now with technology and the multi-channels, and obviously, a lot of the time self-serves added into, obviously the first solution is self-serve a lot of the time. We've obviously got stuff like IVRs now, there's chatbots, there's as you mentioned, obviously there's scripts and stuff that are used. What would you say? I mean, I suppose, what kind of, is there any advice you would give on what organizations should consider when it comes to going back to that first initial conversation we had around customer experience or patient experience or whatever it is, around the technology And even though we think it's helping, how it could actually be leading to confusion.
Well, there is one classic example that I have been writing about for, I think, 15 years. And this is the use of IVR as a kind of torture.
Okay.
So here's a little bit of medical science, or in fact, customer experience science. If you play someone a piece of music with a beat of 120 beats per minute, what do you think happens, Perry?
Well, I would guess that it would. Well, I know for a fact that when I go running, I have music that's a little bit quicker than that, and my feet move quicker. so yeah, I would suggest that it gets some part of your body kind of moving or
It
speeding
gets you
your brain
pumping.
up. Yeah, I'm sure
It
it does.
gets you, it gets you pumping. It gets you pumping, and it also creates stress. Right? Okay, so that's the first bit. Now, here's the second bit. Okay, what happens if you have one piece of music that just continuously plays and doesn't seem to have a beginning or an end? And it goes on for 5, 7, 8 minutes because someone's thought that by you not noticing the changing in time, you won't notice how long you've been in the queue. Whereas, in fact, the more you go round and round a musical maze, the more confused you become.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, obviously, I watched that SAS Who Dares Wins, and that's a similar thing that they actually use in their torture sessions towards the end of the series. Obviously, it is more baby crying, but as you say, they say because of the closed off space and the repetitiveness of it, it could be any noise that they play would drive you insane over a period of time. So yeah, it's a very good point.
They're pushing up your heart rate.
Yeah.
It's going around in circles. Is this enough torture? No, let's add an irrelevant message. Did you know that if you wanted to buy this on the website, then you can at www, and that every 30 seconds when you came from the website instead. So here is a piece of really wonderful design, and I see it all of the time, matched only by welcome to Company X, the best company in this field, which so many organizations have a bragging thing at the start of their customer support thing when you phone to complain. And then you're passing that person who you've confused, upset, and managed poorly to an agent who's already under stress. I mean, this is basic customer experience design. And I see it, I hear it when I analyze organizations' experiences, and when I go to call organizations as a customer. I find this frequently. Fast music, no beginning, no end. You want to feel like you're on a journey, but you don't want to feel you're on a triumphant march or a dirge. You want to pick a sensitive set of music and some interesting comments, but ideally not a ton of comments that are irrelevant to the person. And the final thing, because I'm building at the moment, I'm building a voice bot that is needs to be supportive for patients. If the voice bot doesn't understand, it's not going to ask you to repeat itself. It's going to put you through to a human. We build bad experiences because I think that you need to have lived an experience a few hundred times to find the things that are irritating about it. And then you need to get rid of what's irritating. And I think that that's not common practice. I'm writing a training course about this at the moment because I do think it's an important thing. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I do think that living the experience and asking what's going to be irritating in this. If I want to know all of the services, I should be able to ask, and you should explain stuff in really simple form. So my my newest IVR announcement will say, if you know what you want to do, then just start speaking. Otherwise, here's some information about the services I can do in an automated fashion. You know, don't make me wait 3 minutes. Don't make me, you know. We can do so much with technology, and what we do in general, we do badly. So that's why I think it's not broken. It's just not built very well.
Yeah, interesting. No, great couple of points there. And I think, as you say, there is that that whole piece of as I say, when it comes back to the customer experience stuff, and everyone always says, that the contact center agent's one of the hardest jobs in the industry, etc., etc. They only deal with irate customers, and customers are becoming more demanding, customer demands have changed, etc., etc. Yeah, as you say, actually, when you come back to this, and as you say, they've gone onto the website already, they've looked at all of these points that you've got on your frequently asked question page and whatever else. They've tried to sort of chatbot, not got the answer, and it's saying, please call us, please call us. Then they've called you and you've been pounded with music and repetitive messages of it. No wonder by the time they actually get to the agent, they've given up. Kind of actually, yeah, it is real interesting points there. I think it is something to think about on, I say, customer journey doesn't just start on the call. It starts from the beginning, but everything in between impacts it. As you say, just because the agent might have been the best agent you've ever spoken to and dealt with your case originally, if you spent, as you said, it doesn't even need to be very long. 3 minutes listening to repetitive music is long enough to start driving you insane. It does have a long-term impact on your experience. So yeah, really interesting points there. I think hopefully people take something away from that. But I mean, just kind of on that IVR piece, and on obviously what you mentioned and stuff. I mean, do you have a, we've asked you obviously for a top tip on everything so far, but is there a top tip you would give to someone that when reviewing their kind of IVR system, or or what have you seen? Have you seen a good practice that has worked well with an IVR? I know you mentioned obviously around the piece of actually asking what are you calling for, but yeah, is there any other kind of top tip or good practice you've seen that has worked?
So I think the cost and functionality of voice bots now means that they are a very good replacement for IVR.
Yeah.
And that you can structure quite a simplistic conversation without a great deal of imagination. But if you do the analytics properly, you can really do some very sophisticated conversations. And so what that does is that completely gets rid of the IVR experience.
Yeah.
And that includes calling me back instead of me waiting in a queue. That includes moving me on to an automated path to get some of the information before I speak to the person. So they've got the file and the information in front of them, and therefore they're more productive. And making it easy for everyone is the most important thing. I've never been a great fan of surveys. I like to analyze small details.
Yeah.
But the group who came up with customer effort score, effort is a real thing. Effort is something we remember. Effort is something we measure. Yeah, and so the guys who worked on that, although I don't necessarily think surveys is the best way to understand it, the actual science of effort, how much of a pain in the proverbial bleep is this? And what can we do to reduce that? What can we do to give the person the information at the right time? Or is it's now 20 years since I worked on a project whereby you could put a button on a website or in an early app, and it would put you through to a person in a call center. And in those days, what it did was it converted the details of your account number into beeps and blurps to convince a telephone system that you were pressing numbers in. Bum, 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 bum. Right. Now, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Today, we could do much more seamless things, and we need to focus on fixing one small thing and then fix another. You know, the basic rule of transformation, and I've worked on some global transformations of hundreds of millions of pounds for global banks, hundreds of millions of pounds worth of technology in order to protect billions of pounds worth of activity. Fix small things in a row. And that's when you build transformation and change.
No, I think that's a brilliant point to finish on. To fair, I think, as you know, it comes back to that point. You know, the quicker you fail, the quicker you succeed, isn't it? As you say, you can't change everything overnight, so don't try to. But just look at the stuff that you're doing, fix little bits as you're going along. You think, hang on a minute, why do we do that? Why don't we try this? And just, as I think that's a brilliant point. I mean, I don't know whether I think that's an excellent point to finish on there, Morris. With a great statement, but I don't know if there is anything you kind of wanted to say before I let you go, or anything that you do have a final point. But as I say, I think, you know, starting small, fail fast is an excellent finishing point. But I don't know whether you did have anything you wanted to finish on.
Just one final point. Beyond, first of all, thanking you for this great opportunity.
No, thank you.
I hope people have enjoyed it, and do check out the other sessions. But my final point is this: do it with a sense of humor. Yeah, you need to do everything with a sense of humor, because we humans, we have a sense of humor, and that comes into play. Blame culture is not as useful as a happy culture. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. No, yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. As I say, and that's exactly the reason we do these. And thank you very much for bringing you on. As I think, you know, it is just about sharing and being in a nice place to work, in a nice environment. So I always, I don't think there's been one of these I haven't done where I haven't giggled, and that was another one. So yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you very much for spending the time today with us and doing this. And hopefully people find it very useful and take, you know, even if they take one bit and change one thing, then we've done our job today, haven't we? So thank you very much for that, Morris, and I appreciate your time in joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, Morris.
Bye-bye.